Hey, Texas Values listeners, welcome to the Texas Values Report on this glorious day. Jonathan Covey filling in for Jonathan Sines. Happy weekend to all of you. We have a very exciting news and events lined up for you today, along with a recap of what's going on in the Texas legislature. Also, some exciting events that we have coming up at Texas Values over the next couple of weeks. All that and more, but before I get into that, joining me today is a colleague and a constant at the Texas Capitol, policy advisor for Texas Values, Mary Elizabeth Castle. Mary Elizabeth, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course, Jonathan. It's been a busy week. Glad to be on with you.
It truly has. Well, look, we're at that point in legislative session where, well, I guess the rubber isn't just meeting the road. It's actually probably starting to melt a little bit, especially out after what a lot of people consider to be a slower than usual start for the legislature and for the session, thanks to coronavirus and the February ice storm. But I'm optimistic, and part of the reason why is because we've seen some truly exciting movement on several of our priority bills recently, not the least of which is the heartbeat bill, SB 8, by Senator Brian Hughes.
Yeah, that's right. That's been really exciting couple of weeks for the heartbeat bill, Jonathan. As you know, the heartbeat bill, we like to say once a heartbeat is detected, the baby must be protected. And so most of you who are in the pro-life movement know that this bill is about making sure that doctors detect a heartbeat for a baby and then doing whatever they can to protect the life of that baby. So we believe this is a strong pro-life bill that will save many babies' lives. And if you've been following us, you know that we had a hearing on the Senate version, SB 8, not too long ago. It was in March, and that was a very good hearing. We heard a lot of pro-life voices. A lot of our partners came out and testified for that bill, and we had no opposition in that hearing in the Senate. And then fast forward, I think maybe just a couple of weeks later, we had the House version filed by Representative Shelby Slauson. And you heard from her last week on this radio show talk about that bill. And we had a good hearing there as well. So we have both versions of that bill that have had really good public hearings, a lot of testimony from different angles, from people talking about how they value life, from people talking about how they, went through abortion and they now regret that and they want to stand for life. But just all in all, just a lot of support for this issue. And so, like Jonathan said, we're really optimistic that this is a bill that can get passed and that we can protect a lot of babies' lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had some great testimony on both of those bills. I think Abby Johnson came out to speak at one point too, and we've had her on the show before. Jonathan Sines has spoken with her, but just some really fantastic support and for this bill. We've seen both on the House side and on the Senate side. So we're very excited that this bill is moving forward, and we're planning on continuing to push it, continuing to talk to legislators. And if you get an opportunity and you want to ask your legislator as well about SB 8 and talking about the heartbeat bill and whether or not they're a co-author on that bill, you should call or reach out to your state representative or your state senator and make sure they're an author on this bill. We are talking with Mary Elizabeth Castle, policy advisor for Texas Values, talking about a legislative update and talking about the heartbeat bill, which we had some exciting news on recently. Let's talk a little bit about, Mary Elizabeth, about religious freedom, because in 2020, Texans saw really an attack on religious freedom like they had never seen before. Churches in Texas and around the country were forced by government to close. Government officials abused their power by telling churches they had to close for months during COVID, you remember, and while other businesses and gathering places were continuing to operate, were continuing to stay open. Target was open, Walmart was open. And one thing we know is that churches provide a lot of essential spiritual and mental health support during times of crisis. So it's not a good thing to close a church. It not only eliminates these critical services that churches provide, but it also violates the religious freedom rights that are guaranteed to us by the Constitution, in the Constitution, by the Free Exercise Clause. And courts have been very clear on this issue. The U.S. Supreme Court already struck down a government official. You remember Governor Andrew Cuomo, he had his attempt to use COVID-19 to restrict religious freedom. That was struck down. So in the legislature right now, we have the Freedom to Worship Bill, the Freedom to Worship Act, as we're calling it, SB 26 by Senator Angela Paxton. We also have HB 1239 by Representative Scott Sanford. And we've been working on these bills and they've had some great traction. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's right. Like Jonathan said, it was a crazy year for churches, for a first time that I've ever seen. And I think a lot of people had ever seen that churches were told to close. But we know that that's not what the Constitution says. And that's like not a good idea, especially in this time when so many people really need that spiritual foundation. But just to recap, like Jonathan said, on where these bills are. So we had two good hearings again on these bills, hearing from a lot of different pastors of a lot of different types of churches and different types of backgrounds, just talking about how churches are really essential. So the details of where these bills are now is that we do have the Senate version that did pass on the Senate floor. And then we do have the House version that passed on the House floor. And, things can get a lot interesting in the House. But you did have bipartisan support in the Texas House of Representatives, which sometimes it isn't always expected on our issues. But we're seeing, some representatives we don't really see, sign on to our bills who voted for Representative Sanford's bill in the House. And I think that just really speaks to the issue that, a lot of people see the need for the church and society and the need for the church, especially in this time. And so we have that House version that passed as well. And so it's going to be an interesting operation, I guess you would say, of what happens next. I'm not as experienced as Jonathan in this process, so I've never really seen two similar bills, kind of both pass out of the House and, what will happen next with that. But I think we can at least be confident and say that if, you have a Senate version that passed and a House version that passed, then something is going to be passed on this issue of making sure that churches are essential and that we have the freedom to worship, just like the bill title says.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. We've seen we've taken votes now on both sides. The House has voted and has passed out a version, and the Senate has voted, and they're substantively the same. So the House and Senate have different rules for how they go about passing bills. The House is actually a little bit more flexible. They can allow a bill that's been passed, which is identical in the House and the Senate, to be substituted and go straight to the floor. The Senate is a little more strict. So we'll see how things work out. I know there are some things going on behind the scenes, people working to make sure that this goes on. But like you said, just a lot of support for this on not only in the House and the Senate, but on both sides of the aisle. So I think we have a really good shot in being able to see some very effective legislation coming through to the governor's desk this session. And so we're very excited about that and the prospect of that. So we, and it's very important too, because we talk about religious freedom. Religious freedom is really considered to be one of our first rights. It is one of the reasons why this country was founded. It's the reason why it was put into the First Amendment to the Constitution. So it's an extremely important thing. And we at Texas Values often talk to and reach out to pastors and ask pastors to continue to lift us up, to lift up this legislation and pray for it, that we can continue to protect the rights that we have in this country. And so we're very excited about the prospects of that. And going forward, we're going to continue working on that. Also, part of what we do at Texas Values, and just transitioning a little bit, is part of what we do is protecting families and protecting children. And one of the things we've seen as the LGBT movement has become more exposed to children, and it's become more exposed to them through radical sex education efforts, are attempts to interfere with the biological development of minors and of children. So oftentimes you'll see parents who help their children by providing them with puberty blocking drugs in an attempt to quote unquote affirm their gender identity that really rejects bodily reality and rejects biological science. And this is profoundly unethical. And you can also see where these children, as they get older, they go to doctors to get healthy body parts removed because they believe that they were born in the wrong body and they want their body to match the gender that they consider that they are. I'm not making this stuff up. This really happens. And so you may have heard recently in Texas, there was a custody battle over a young boy whose mother wanted to transition him to a girl, beginning with puberty blockers and then, possibly even procedures and castration as a teenager. So after further counseling, along with input by the boy's father, it was determined that this boy didn't suffer from what they call gender dysphoria. And what we know is that research has proven that the effects of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones are not risk-free, and they're not reversible, and they can have devastating consequences for children. So during this session, we have worked with Representative Matt Krause to file a bill called HB 1399. And what it does is it says that physicians and healthcare providers are prohibited from performing certain types of gender transitioning surgical procedures. They're prohibited from providing different types of drugs and medications that block puberty to individuals who are under 18. And so this bill actually went through committee. It got a vote out yesterday without amendment in the House, which is very good news. And so and now it's headed to the House floor. It'll go through calendars and then the House floor for final approval, and then we'll be ready to go to the Senate. So this is a very good thing for Texas. It's a very good thing for children and protecting vulnerable children. And we're going to continue to work towards pushing towards this goal as well. And I wanted to touch a little bit on, see if perhaps Mary Elizabeth, if you could kind of touch a little bit on our efforts on fair play, because as many of you know, we've been working on a bill with Representative Valerie Swanson, HB 1458, having to do with biological men not competing in biological women's sports. So I wonder if you could just kind of give us just a little bit of an update and background on that issue, Mary Elizabeth.
Yeah, if you've been watching the national news, you might have come across this. There's been just a recent uprise of a lot of male athletes who claim that they identify as females who are competing in female sports. There have been several clips of, track and field athletes where they're just dominating. And you can definitely see the speed difference of, these, fully developing male athletes, just dominating over these females who are actually really good athletes. We've talked about the case in Connecticut, the federal court case where these girls, have been training their entire lives. I mean, they trained before school, after school, during school, and they were champions. And then you have these male athletes who were actually in last place the year before they identified as females, now dominating in their sports. And it's just simply not fair. And you'll hear counter arguments all the time about, well, if they're really good, it doesn't matter. But it comes down to the biology as well. We know that a lot of these biological male athletes, they aren't taking hormones. And even the research shows that even if, you know, they are, you know, taking some type of hormone suppression, even a year afterwards, they're still biologically at an advantage. And so we're trying to protect those efforts in Texas because this comes down to just fairness. I mean, the fact that you have, you know, like I said, these male athletes who sometimes weren't even competing at a really good level before, and then they're beating out these opportunities, you know, for females. And, you know, you can't just say it's just sports. I mean, sports are American. We love entertainment. Sports are a way of, you know, not just having fun, but sports, you know, portray a lot of things to young people and just building confidence, giving them something else to look forward, you know, after school. And even more so for female athletes, you know, sports provide educational opportunities and they teach them things about teamwork and leadership that they can, you know, use for the rest of their lives. And we know that this is important because we have Title IX. We created Title IX in the 1970s, so we could actually, you know, have opportunities for females to compete like in their own spotlight. And that's when we created the opportunity for female sports. So it's really interesting that we even have, you know, our own president right now kind of backtracking on that female rights issue of, you know, Title IX. And so that's why we really want to support this bill by Representative Valerie Swanson, 1458, that really protects female sports at the, you know, secondary school level, high school, middle school, but also in college as well, because that's where the money actually rolls in, where females can actually fund their education through playing sports. Now, you may have heard that there is another bill by Senator Charles Perry, and there was a hearing for that a couple of weeks ago. And that bill protects female sports as well. Now, the status of that bill is that it, you know, had a hearing, of course, several weeks, and it was actually voted on the Senate floor yesterday. And that was actually a really floor vote because you had Senator Lois Kolkhorst. While she did not carry the bill, she gave a really supportive speech about how sports was very important for her and how when she was a little girl, they didn't have, you know, an opportunity to play baseball. And so whenever her brother would practice baseball, she would hit, I think, Coke cans in the field. And when Title IX was passed, she was actually interviewed, I think, as a 10-year-old girl about what Title IX would mean to her. And so she grew up to be a high school athlete. I believe she played, I can't remember what sport, I think it was basketball, but in college, she chose to actually play golf because, you know, that's what Title IX at her college allowed her to play. But she just talked about that importance and how, you know, in today's world, if she were to be an athlete now, how that would be challenged if we don't have this bill to protect female sports. And so that was really powerful on the floor yesterday. And so we're definitely optimistic about Representative Swanson's bill coming up in the House. But as we're seeing in the Senate with the vote yesterday, you know, it passed successfully. It didn't pass, you know, across party lines. But we're really optimistic. And it's just speeches like that of Senator Kolkhorst that really help this issue and just show that it's really about the fairness and it's really about, you know, preserving what we have already, you know, established through Title IX and through what we have done to support sports, you know, for young girls, but for young people in general. And so we're really hopeful about that bill. And there's going to be a hearing on the House version of Senator Perry's bill this upcoming week, actually. So if you want to write people on the public education committee about supporting that bill, then that will be helpful as well. But I mean, the fact that we're having, you know, several bites of the apple with all these, you know, different bills on this issue of protecting girls' sports, I think it's really good. And you should just support the issue in general, and we'll see which bill, you know, gets to the finish line.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And you remember the story, and we've talked about this before, of the sprinter, the young lady named Allison Felix, who was the world champion sprinter in the 150-meter dash. And, she could run, I think she could run the 150-meter dash in like 16.3 seconds, something like that. And it's just amazing, the incredible athleticism and speed. And yet that very year, with her all-time best, I think it was something like 150 or maybe 250 high school boys was able to beat her time. So just demonstrating the biological differences between male and female bodies, and the unfairness that results when you don't allow females to compete in their own sports. And so that's why this bill is just really incredibly important, and is something that we've been working hard for and we continue to support. So you're absolutely right, and thank you for that update, Mary Elizabeth. And I want to, we're getting near the end of our time, but I want to bring a date up to you. Friday, April 23rd, 2021. That's next Friday. That's this coming Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. We will be having our Legislative Advocacy 102. Now, if you remember, we had Legislative Advocacy Training 101 several weeks ago. We went through and we talked about how do you legislate, how do you advocate in the legislature? How do you talk to your representatives? How do you get your point across? How do you do your research? How does the legislature work? We discussed a bunch of different things like this. Well, this is an advanced training that we're offering starting next Friday to teach you how to continue your journey of how to become a legislative advocate for faith, for family, to a legislative advocate for freedom at the Texas Capitol. So if you missed our Legislative Advocacy 101, you can go to our website at txvalues.org. You can look up our video. We have a whole video. It's free to access. You can look that up on our Legislative Advocacy 101. And if you're thirsting for more and you just have to have more, and you want to learn, you want to go deeper and talk about things in detail about like committee process. How does the committee process work? How do substitute drafts work? If you want to talk about advanced strategies for searching for bills, how do you look up statutes in Texas code? We're going to discuss some basic House and Senate parliamentary procedures. We're probably also going to give a short update as well on legislation, a short legislative update, and talk to you about how things have gone in the past week. So you can go to our website. You can sign up Friday, April 23rd, 2021. From 12 to 1 p.m. This is a virtual event, so it'll be completely online by Zoom, and you can RSVP there. And you can also look at making a donation if you're so inclined. So we're excited about this event. We're excited to offer it as a resource for you. And although we're starting to get to the end of our time, I just wanted to let you know that you can get more information about any of the subjects that we've talked about on our website at txvalues.org. You can also, if you're interested in keeping up with what the legislature is doing on a day-by-day basis or a week-by-week basis, you can also sign up for our text alerts by texting TX Values to 797979. Again, that's TX Values at 797979. And you can stay up with everything that we're doing. We try to send out alerts on a regular basis. So if something important comes up, we'll send out an alert. You can get it. You can see it on your phone or on your email. So go online and sign up and stay up with what's going on in the Texas legislature, because as the usual host of our show usually says, government belongs to those who show up. And you can show up in more ways than one. You can pray, you can write, you can call, you can email. You can go and rent a billboard. You can take advantage of all kinds of technology. You can sign up with Texas Values. But I particularly want to thank you for how grateful we are for you showing up today, for listening to us speak and talk about the legislature. It truly means a lot for making Texas a more conservative state, a more pro-life state to live in, and we continue to work towards that. as a goal day by day. That's what we do at Texas Values. So you can catch us here every week, same time, same place. Mary Elizabeth, thanks again for being on with us as well. We look forward to seeing you all next time. Join us next time on the Texas Values Report.